2 years ago, I started making jewelry. What actually happened was something I did not see coming, and I am still in the messy middle of it.
Today's story is about a strawberry, a dead woman I never met, and somehow, a business. I'm 10 years old. I'm in my dad's townhome. In his dark kitchen, it had these brown cabinets everywhere, very, very 80s, and I am hungry. And my dad is making me a snack. He's making me strawberries, my favorite fruit. And he is taking a while. So I am standing around and trying to peer, see what's taking so long. When I eat strawberries, I honestly just pop the whole thing into my mouth. Like, the leaves are vegetables as far as I'm concerned. Or if I don't want to eat the leaves, I just chop them off. But when I peer around and look what my dad is doing, he is carefully, painstakingly carving out the leaf and the pith like this cone shape into the strawberry. And that's what is taking so long. And so I'm trying not to be impatient, but I'm feeling kind of impatient. So I'm like, hey, Dad, why are you doing it that way? Kind of like, let's get this rolling. And my dad, totally calm, almost meditative, says to me, my mother used to cut strawberries this way. And when I cut them this way, I think of her. My grandmother, Marichu, has this almost a mythic level status in my family. She died in her 40s, so well before I ever came onto the scene. And everyone describes her as this saint. She was kind, she was generous, she never spoke a bad word about anybody. There's this story. One of her nieces, let's call her Yoli, came to visit the family for the weekend, and the family was going to a wedding, but Yoli couldn't afford a new dress to go to the wedding. So Marichu, who was a dress designer, took Yoli's measurements and then spent the whole night designing a custom dress just for Yoli so that Yoli could attend the wedding and not feel out of place. That dress meant so much to Yoli. Yoli still has that dress. She's kept it in pristine condition. I've touched it with my own hands. I almost cried when I touched it. Marichu was the only person in my family who, to my knowledge, made a living as an artist. She's also the only grandparent I never got to meet. And I take after her physically, not only in my face, but the story goes that my grandfather fell in love with my grandmother from the legs up. They were at a beach in Cuba. My grandfather sees these pair of chunky, strong, thick, gorgeous legs, calves to be specific, and they happen to be connected to this beautiful woman, and that was it. He fell in love. And these chunky calves, both my father and I have inherited, and I actually had one time a person tell me that if they were on a deserted island and they were starving, they would eat my calves first. They said this unprompted. Very odd thing to say to somebody. Fast forward, I am in my late 20s. At this point in my life, I am solidly agnostic, which means I'm equally open to everything being possible and nothing being possible. And a good friend of mine who was way more woo than I was at that time said that she had a friend who was a medium. And this medium wanted to practice her long distance mediumship with someone that she didn't know. Would I be down? And I was like, hell yes. Because either this stuff is real, which is amazing, or it's not, and it's going to be a fucking hilarious story. But also, I have a background in human behavior. I have training in body language, and I am personally very, very, very good at reading people. So there is a part of me that thinks that this whole idea of mediumship and speaking to people's loved ones could very easily be a scam. People who are just really good at reading others and they're just making shit up. So I am determined going into this experience to give the woman nothing. So I get on the call with a total resting bitch face. And to be honest, I was probably a little bit rude to her in hindsight. Nonetheless, she dives right in and she says, I sense a female presence. And in my head, I'm like, okay, that's like about half of the population. I'm not super impressed so far, but externally, I just say, okay. And then she goes on and she says, someone older, maybe a mother, maybe a grandmother. And at this point in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm in my 20s. Chances are, if I know someone who is dead, they're probably going to be older than me. Like, guessing a dead grandmother's like is not impressive. And now I'm starting to think, oh God, did I sign up for a 30-minute scam to be on this call with this woman? I'm gonna have to stand here and be polite and pretend that I think this is real when I think this is all fucking bullshit. But again, I look at her straight face and I just say, okay. And then her tone changed. And she kind of like corked her head and got a little curious. And she was like, I'm seeing strawberries. Does that mean anything to you? My heart plummeted into my belly. I totally froze. Like, remember, Marichu died well before I was born. At this point in my life, I really don't have much of a connection with her. One of the only things that I associate her with happens to be my favorite fruit. I go totally still, my heart starts pounding, and I just confirm. I say, yes, that means something. And then the medium goes, she says, "You're wild." And I can't help it. I start laughing because I was not expecting that. And honestly, at the time, I didn't think of myself as being particularly wild. But yes, upon further consideration, would a conservative Catholic Cuban woman who migrated here and then died in the 70s think that I was a little bit wild? Okay, you can see how that would be the case. But also, what the fuck, abuela? Like, this is the first time you get to communicate with your granddaughter who you never met on this plane. And you don't have words of wisdom for me. You don't tell me that you're proud of me. Like, this is the thing that you have to say? Okay. About a decade after this experience with the medium, I decided to start a jewelry and art business. And while I do actually have a lot of people with artistic talent in my family, to my knowledge, there is only one person who ever did art for a living. And that person is someone with whom now I actually share a lot of connections. So I knew from the get-go that strawberry was going to be part of my business name. Lightning came later, but that's another story. Marichu, the only grandparent who I never met, has kind of ironically become the foundation for this business that I'm building. And I honestly think of her every day. And just in the last couple months, when I do my nightly outdoor meditations, I've started to picture her behind me. Sometimes I picture her hand on my shoulder. And she's standing there and she's loving me and guiding me and supporting me. And it's like I never met her, but now I'm starting to wonder if that is actually true. I'm Carolina. This is Strawberry Lightning, and I'll see you on the next one.